I'll be on the lookout for her.
Freddie had some photos that she wanted to share.
Okay.
And she texted them to me, and I think she's gonna email them to you.
Okay. I'll be on the lookout for those too.
All right.
We can also do a thing where you make her a co-host and she can share screen.
Did everyone receive the second revised agenda?
Yes.
Okay.
I think so.
Yeah.
Hi, Bill.
Hi, Bill. Were the minutes from the last meeting circulated, or
Which last meeting? Where the minutes for the 30th of June had gone back to the drawing board with James. They were being held because Freddie and James were going to discuss how they wanted to adjust that.
Oh, that's
Have
right.
we
Yeah.
formally called the meeting to order yet?
No, I shall do this
Oh,
right now.
sorry.
Okay, it is 7:03 p.m. It is the 28th of July, and the St. Mark Street Park Working Group meeting is now in session. And the first order of business is to review and approve the minutes of, my typo, I said July 4th wrong, July 14th, July 19th, and also prior to that, the minutes for June 30th were held at the last meeting.
Freddie's going to be coming over really soon. So sorry. Freddie's here. I'm trying to move around.
Okay.
There we go.
I will apologize. I somehow slipped me to revise the June 30th minutes. Sorry about that.
No problem. Did Freddie contact you about how she wanted the wording? I think it was number 14 that she wasn't sure about. We've still got it's 45 days is the deadline for getting them in, so we're fine. So not to worry. Worst case, we could put them in the way they are and then make an emendation later. All right. Okay, so then the meeting of July 14th. Where are we on that one?
Sorry. Apologies. Oh, and
Should we hold those until our next meeting?
I believe so. I'm
all right,
sorry.
let's do it. Don't worry about it. Absolutely
No problem.
not.
May I ask a question? Are people getting Zoom links to come to these meetings?
Oh,
And if so,
No.
why am I not?
I'm not.
I just go to the website and enter as a like a layperson, and then Andrew promotes me. I believe is how it's been working.
Yeah.
Same here.
Same.
I guess we're all doing it the same way, but normally
Correct.
committee members get links to their meetings.
So you
So-
should have got that, and I asked Jay earlier. I thought I saw one, but if
I did
not,
get a link.
sorry,
I
it's
got
all
I
good
got a
now.
link. Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, we're all here. Again, James, I'm here to report that the July 19th meeting, which was joint with historical, we had 4 people there. I filed an agenda. I took minutes. I wrote them up. That was fine. It was just like 1 sentence of minutes. And then it turns out that what is considered a quorum is not how many people you have on your committee, the majority of that, but it's how many people are in your charge. So I'd assumed 4 people would be a quorum because we had 7 people on the committee. Wrong. It's actually 5. So I called Jim Haggerty and I said, well, we had a meeting, but we obviously didn't have a meeting, but we spoke and asked questions, and he said, do minutes for that, even though it wasn't a meeting, just in case somebody wonders. So that's where we are with that. And I cannot clarify that anymore because I don't understand it. It is above my pay grade.
May I make a suggestion?
Sure, Freddie, go ahead.
I would suggest you write 4 members of the committee, not a quorum, attended the Historical Commission meeting. Here's a note of what, here's notes on what was discussed. These are, and not to be considered meetings because we didn't, minutes because we didn't have a quorum. And then you're acknowledging that there were members there. Can we all, if we're not speaking, can we all put our computers on mute? There's crazy static coming across and I can't think. And
Okay,
I tried
I'm
to
gonna
watch.
go mute. Tell me if you still hear it.
I don't hear it now, but it doesn't mean it's not happening. I tried to listen to the last meeting and it was almost unlistenable. The static was so bad.
I'm gonna turn off my fan.
Is that right? I don't hear any static, but
I don't hear it now. Try watching the last meeting.
okay.
Anyhow, thank you.
Okay, so let's see how
And then those would not be approved by the committee? The chair could submit them because they're not minutes.
Jim said do the minutes and have them approved, which I didn't send them around yet to do that. So that I don't know, it's very confusing.
I don't think you can approve minutes when you don't have a quorum, so you don't have a meeting.
Exactly.
I think you can cover yourself by writing them up as chair but I wouldn't
Just say
have.
notes, yeah, and have them
Maybe we'll
posted.
append them to the minutes of this meeting.
Good plan. Thank you. That's excellent. Okay.
No,
All
you
right.
can't.
Why not? Consider it a report back. Consider it a report back on what went on at that meeting, which was basically we listened to the presentation and then we adjourned.
Marguerite, if it helps, I can make sure that the written historical commission minutes make note of my friends here at the working group's presence, and so that it's documented in the
It is
record.
documented. All right, thank you. That would be fine.
The
That would be
KPAS is going to do the minutes, so I'm sure there'll be really good ones.
all
And
right.
then say, see the historical commission minutes.
Okay. Can we move on to the second agenda item, which is recap of the Archaeological Consulting Services presentation to the Historical Commission? Kevin, I was hoping you could fill us in.
I will try, and I will try to do it really quick. Greg talked.
I am also having, I'm sorry, difficulty hearing you. You're very staticky. So I'm on mute.
No fan running here, so I don't. Is it me?
I hear you perfectly fine, Kevin. I'm not sure.
So do I.
Okay, it's good now. All right, I'll go on. Greg talked for including the time he spent taking questions from us, 45, 50 minutes or so. And I apologize at the time, and I'll do it again here, is that in the confusion of getting everybody sort of situated and on board in that call, I forgot to hit the record button until he had been talking a couple minutes. But the bulk, really all that was missed was my introduction to him. And the bulk of what he said is on the YouTube recording. So if people want to go look at it. He was great. I'll give you the quick rundown of some of the things that he said. He noted that the cemetery was established, the old burial ground, in 1727, and that they had clear evidence that the walls, those are the first walls in 1727, but they had been expanded twice. He indicated with regard to the Mass Historical Commission that their permitting regulations are quite strong and quite stringent, and that he fully expected that the permit itself would occupy half of the report because they have to do a great deal of preparatory work to get the go-ahead. That they had used both state files and literature in their research, and that the mandate here is to document anything to be impacted by park construction. He did indicate that there were two factors really sort of driving this so far in his investigation. One, that there was strong documentation of the presence of marginalized groups in the area and possible interments there. And secondly, the fact that again, that the walls had been moved several times. So it was unclear if they had moved, in or out, or, formerly encompass things that they may no longer encompass. Historical maps show a structure in that parcel that we've been discussing to the north of the stone walls, the old burial ground, present by at least 1870. That's thought to have been connected to a Burnett property there, but it's unclear what that is, and that's going to be part of the investigation. He indicated that a modification of the plan may be possible at the demand of the State Historical Commission. He anticipated a 1 month until being on site, and that was a moving target pending the state. The goal here is to try to identify before impacting any graves. They'll do two kinds of testing, right? Shovel tests, where they actually dig down. I liken it to sort of digging holes for a post. These are half-meter square excavations at an interval of 5 meters. So it's about 16.5 feet. Every 16.5 feet, they'll be digging down until they get to soil that predates human habitation, which he indicated could run 2 to 3 feet. So there'll be that. The other part of it is there'll be soil stripping, which will be done with heavy equipment, where they're literally scraping back layers to make sure. He indicated part of this was to avoid false negatives, because when you do those shovel tests at various intervals, you could nonetheless miss stuff. So they'll take a much larger area and do some scraping as well. They want to strip until they arrive at, he described the soil conditions as being like a layer cake, the top layer sort of brown and filled with organic matter, then turning yellowish in a second layer. And then finally, when you get to sort of a substrata, you're at a kind of gray soil. So one of the ways that they would know that there's a possible burial there is that what he called a grave shaft feature would be indicated by the soil sort of being mixed up and no longer in an intact sort of layer cake kind of effect. Let's see, I'm trying to only do the main things. If burials are found, work will immediately stop. MHC will be brought in and they will sort of notify the appropriate authorities. The report that he's going to issue is to include recommendations for the further preserving of any burials or artifacts that may be present. And of course, we already know that there are some pottery and glass shards and that kind of thing present. So the goal here, and he would make recommendations involving possible further mitigation. He did talk about an example. It was interesting to me because it involved the moving of a parking lot down in Woonsocket. I don't know, those of you who were there, if you remember this, where they sort of moved a planned parking lot, basically planted grass and installed what he described as a monumental marker to mark a place where they had in fact found burials. One interesting point I think people would be interested in is that, naturally you'd be interested in an interesting point, but he did make the point that bones, something more than just, an alteration of the soil composition, could exist in New England soil for between 500 and 1,000 years. So it's not out of the question that bones may be found if they're present. And that's based on various factors having to do with the soil. And he gave some examples of certain burial practices. For instance, if the bodies were burned, would lead to one result, or if a body were buried with a copper necklace, it might preserve the skull, and so on. The parking lot, he indicated, is not within the scope, but that Mass Historical may require it. His quote on this was, "They're picky." So if there's evidence to suggest a field of inquiry to the north, the state might step in. He predicted that he would be present on site early to mid-September. That's the hope. So that's after Labor Day. And of course, the final report would come after that, although he would have some sense of what was there, what wasn't there in very short order, because as you know, those of you that were there, he's only expecting at this point, barring further discovery, to be on site for 2 days. So it all may, once it finally happens, it will all happen very quickly. That is the 50 cent synopsis. I hope I wasn't too confusing.
That was fine. It was fascinating. I recommend people go back and watch it if they haven't seen it already. And the other thing that I just wanted to stress was that if there are any findings at all, the archaeological firm and the Mass Historical and the state archaeologist will take over the work of notifying any tribal groups at that point. So we have nothing basically to do with that until at all, basically. It's out of our hands as of the hiring of the archaeological firm. So just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, that's a good point to make, Marguerite. I mean, the regulatory responsibility lies entirely with Mr. Walwer and going to St. Mark's, and it's between him and the state, basically.
Yeah.
And he's such an impressive individual, and just I must say, I think we could all feel really, really good about who's going to do it, and the way the approach was so impressive to me in terms of the professionalism that he just exudes from every pore, really, that I feel like we're going to get a good answer, a definitive answer, one way or another.
Good. So thank you. Questions from the working group members? No? All right. Well, thank you for that. I think the next agenda item is the legacy park design in Vermont, which Andrew saw and took a picture of as something to think about, as a very simple design that was quite effective.
You are still muted, Andrew, by the way.
Okay, I was just moving some stuff around my computer. This is one of those things where I didn't know this would be elevated to a whole agenda item, but because I don't know if other people have this experience, but you're walking around and you're thinking about this and you see something that looks kind of interesting, you take a picture of it on your phone. So this is not basically, I was just driving randomly in Vermont, and I was in Brattleboro. So there's this much larger park called the Living Memorial Park, which it has like a ski jump, and it's many acres. But I really just pulled off to the side of the road to just have something to eat. And there is it's a parcel that's like, it's about the same shape, the same size. I mean, it's extremely simple. So you'll see in like all the grass is totally burnt, but along the lines of what we're talking about, some very simple things. Let's see if I can. I thought it was kind of interesting how, let me see if I can press the right buttons here. Share screen. Try this. Okay, so here, again, all the grass is just burnt here, but there's just plants along the edge here that look to be maybe some pollinators. And then I guess one of the themes is, like that citizens, maybe as tributes to people that donated to the park or family members, have these little stones that are around the perimeter of it. I mean, some things I like, the trees here are kind of scraggly and it doesn't look all that attractive with the grass burned out, but I just thought it was interesting, kind of the simplicity of it, all using stone. And I mean, so just again, I've been kind of keeping a file of things that look attractive, that have some good ideas. And also, Freddie, do you want me to show the pictures that you just sent me, and you can kind of maybe talk about them as well?
Yes, same idea.
All right.
So I was at Elm Bank in Natick last night. They had an outdoor concert in the gardens. It's the Mass Hort Society. And it was dark when we left, but that's a heritage type tree that I have been mentioning to, maybe that is the memorial with some, and the stones you were talking about, like plaques around, you know, having some sort of a walk around at the base that could either have historical or monuments to the underserved people of the, you know, the town, plus the indigenous people, some sort of thing. Like, I have no idea what that would look like, but if you can see the grandeur of these trees, that tree, and can you show the next one? It was a, I think it was,
I only got these 2 pictures. Sorry.
oh, you didn't get other pictures of the tree. Well, these are people sitting down in a, and I can email them out now because we've talked about them. This whole area to the front, that this, I'm looking behind me, and to the other side is where there's a stage, and there's also a line of trees that creates, but it's not solid, but it creates an enclosure of the space where people, it's just a grassy area. It's lovely. People come, they sit down, they bring chairs or on the ground and have picnics. But if you can see the size of that tree, we're not growing trees like that anymore. We have the trees in our forest and in our woodlands, but they don't have the space to spread out and arch out and become these magnificent heritage trees. You know, you see the old oak trees in the old fields. There's other trees we've lost, but I really think this would be a monument to our past, because these types of trees were here before, and also a monument to the future generations who will get to enjoy these trees. Back in the, I just read recently that people would, when they bought a farmhouse, not bought, when they created a farmhouse, they would plant 2 trees in front of them. And if you drive around New England, you will see 2 very old trees in front of farmhouses. And it was sort of like they got married, and I don't know the whole myth story. If I find it, I'll send it out. But I just thought, if you see the size of that tree, our trees are all very narrow because they don't get the sunlight and aren't able to spread their wings, so to say. So if you show the other one, this here, and I'll send all the pictures. If you're at Walden Pond, going up to the
There's
visitor,
maybe a better one I can get, Freddie. I'll try to, I see there's the one with the walking area.
yeah. Well, this just shows the circle. It's not tall, it's shrubs. I mean, we can do better than that, certainly. But again, it's a grassy area. You walk up to the visitor center, gift shop, and this, obviously there was no one there, but it's quite obvious that it's used for having programming. So it's just again, very simple, and creates a meeting space. But when it's not being used as a meeting space, it creates a sense of openness and, you know, space and air. And one of the things our open spaces do is there's value in what you see even driving by. Gives you a sense of openness, greenery, and many people will be using this park by driving by. And it's not to be minimized, the value of that. You're entering the town from, you know, it's the gateway to the town if you're coming from the 85 going south, and you're entering the historic area, and to have some open spaced area, it sort of mirrors what's across the street. But so anyhow,
Well,
and
the piece of course, thank you for that, Freddie. And with this, I would like to segue into number 4 on our agenda, which is discussion of Grant's members' key ideas for park layout, function, design, an update on this, and a heritage tree or trees, open space, and also Andrew, your idea of that small park, which I recall you saying felt very peaceful and welcoming, maybe because it was so simple. Are these ideas that we want to add into Grant's collation, basically, of all of our different parameters for what we would like to see in the park? Do we
those
have
were in my
heritage trees?
original, whether they made it to Grants, but I think they were originally what I have been talking about.
Is heritage tree, Grant, could you pop
Uh,
those up, or Andrew, could you pop those up, those pages, and we can see if we've got heritage tree?
Yeah, how about this? Grant, maybe I'll make you
I can do
co-host.
it.
Okay,
Okay,
I'll make you
thank you.
co-host, And
Yeah.
I think that on the second page, the bullet point, peaceful contemplation area, which I think might have been Kevin's suggestion, is something that kind of captures what both Freddie and I were just talking about there.
Okay, that's good. So there's 3 people, make it 4, who thinks that would be a good element. To have.
On the topic of that heritage tree, it's an oak tree. Is there enough space in that parcel for that tree? With the, it just looked like a really big tree.
I don't know, and I have the same kind of question. And the landscape architect can also give you some advice about, like, the pictures that I had. One thing I was struck by is they're really short trees. They look more like apple trees, so they don't give off a lot of shade. And there's just that balance between shade, and then if you have a tree that big, you can really only have like one tree.
I guess that's a question for the landscape architects.
So this is the.
I would say you can have more than one tree if you have one big tree like that and then other smaller trees.
Yeah,
Take a,
that's what I expected. Thank you, Freddie.
take a look at the trees that are existing, where the pollinator preservation garden is in the library, and then between the grassy area and the stone wall, you have not quite as large as that tree, but on the other side of the cemetery, there's certainly a really, really big one that's on its way out. And we still have all those other trees, and then the grassy area. I mean, you have to look certainly to scale to understand. But
Right, and the other part of it is the VHB people may say you can't have a tree that size because the roots will interfere with the drainage that Karen just put in. So I think we'd need to.
isn't the drainage on the other side of the road?
No, there's 3 drains on the piece we're talking about.
Well, it looks like maybe cattails or something are starting to grow there. So much for that.
I wouldn't be surprised. Okay, so a heritage tree.
Anyways.
Yep. Okay.
Was that already in there, or did you just
No.
put that in?
I just put that in there now. We had native plants, trees, vegetation, and pollinator garden, but we didn't have this specific mention of a single large, or space for a single large tree. Yeah, I'm not sure how many of us support that. We can just go around real quick. That would be the easiest way.
All right.
I mean, not a formal vote, but just.
Certainly it would have to fit, right?
I would say large single tree in center of park if feasible. Or
How many
something.
big trees did we just cut down around the edge of the park?
Don't get me started.
Well, so I'm saying there were big trees there before,
Yeah, I know.
and you still had lots of other land, right? So
Well,
Right.
all of this is dependent on if feasible, so I think.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay, so I definitely vote for a heritage tree or trees.
I do as well.
Okay, that's 2.
Same here for me. And can I just comment that wouldn't it be a lovely thing if one of these, really huge old trees that we've lost some in recent times around here could be moved to that spot and saved, I love the idea of a heritage tree. That I was just looking up here, cheating on the side. It's what is the largest tree that's been transplanted? Almost 100 feet, 750-year-old ginkgo tree. So it can be done, but it's expensive, I think, and difficult. It would be a real commitment, but it would also be a really interesting, I think, kind of symbolic move. So I support it.
Good. Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Bill?
That was 3, right? Oh, 4, sorry. Yeah.
Well, I'm
That's good.
assuming Freddie does too, right?
Yeah.
Sure. Planting a tree like that will eventually in 150 years become a specimen makes some sense.
All right, so that, I guess that's a 5.
Count me in, Marguerite.
Okay, good. Andrew?
Yep, I'm gonna say no, just because with all due respect to Freddie, I think I like it, but I'm not sure this is the right, place for it. It's just hard for me to envision. It would take so long for that tree to build, and I think that and to build, not build, grow. Um, that it gets back to the whole, one of the things we were talking about is like shade. I know, I agree. If it really would just be really only like one tree, but I mean, we'll just get some. It all depends on how it might look. So I'm not, just in terms of ranking priorities, because this is like our summary document that's going to the landscape architect, and to me, it's obviously I think he's going to say, you can't do all of these things in this one space, and that's really why I would not count myself as among the members who would prioritize this.
All right, well, let's do this. Let's leave it the way it is and ask the landscape architect to give us feedback on every single item and see what he says, and then visit it from there. How's that?
And can I just weigh in to respond to Andrew's comment that
Sure.
one of the things, this isn't going to be a heritage tree in our lifetime.
All right, I'm having a hard time hearing you. Sorry. I don't know if
It's
others
not
are
going
too.
to be it's not going to be a heritage tree in our lifetime. It's a gift to the future, and it's actually something maybe we could. I'm getting feedback. Can everyone mute again?
Maybe I'll mute.
So it's a gift to the future. You get a good sized one, but as it grows, and the downside is if it doesn't work in the future, dare I say, it can be removed. But the old trees that were planted were people thinking about the future, and we don't do that anymore. We don't think about future generations. And I think, if you look at it that way, you still can plant the smaller trees and have the beautiful design today. And in the future, if people say it doesn't work, they can make that choice. But I think it makes a statement we're thinking about future generations and nodding to the past as well. But I'm not going to
Okay, so
talk you into it.
let's leave it in the list, Freddie. I don't mean to interrupt, but we've got a lot to cover in this meeting, so I am going to recommend that we leave that in as one of the items, getting the 6 people who were in favor of it, and see what VHB comes back with on that. They may laugh, or they may say sure, or they may say they did it in Watertown. So I think that at this point,
I'll just say this last thing. I'm not interested in VHB designing the park. We're getting feedback from them, but if they don't like something that this committee likes, doesn't mean we can't do it. And
yes, and that's another discussion of how locked into VHB are we. So this is basically where we're going to give them this list of prioritizations, and they're going to meet with us a week from tonight, having seen this list, and then tell us what their ideas are. Okay, so this is what I would like to accomplish tonight, and I probably should have said this earlier. I'd like to get this prioritization list in good enough shape that we can email it to them, that Andrew can or I can email it to them tonight, right? Have them look at it. We're talking to them on Monday at 3:30 by Zoom, just Andrew and me, right? As one selectman, one chair here, and the 2 people at VHB who are interested in this. And then they are coming to our meeting on Thursday, and they're basically going to present to us what they can do.
Well,
So this
I
is,
really,
go ahead, Andrew, sorry.
sorry, here's what I was thinking. What I kind of expect to say is, just to give some context and to explain, look, here's a list of a lot of things that are prior. You could tell something from the things that made it high and the things that made it low. And there seems to be a lot of us that want something, more natural, etc. Kind of quieter, but there may be, things in here where you just can't do everything. This is like part of the downside of having a park designed by committee. But then the idea is to then set the stage so he can give us some basic feedback of saying, here's, maybe it is you can do all these things, and here's an idea of how you could do it. Or, some of these things can't be done in conjunction with others, and just kind of begin the discussion, and then hopefully get some, like, I think the end product of the working group for the report and recommendation, it could be like, kind of just a 1-page document, proposed narrative, and also maybe a couple different sketches that show what these things could look like.
Okay, so I'm going to take it and I'm going to go a little bit further with that. I'm going to ask them if they can give us rough sketches when we meet with them a week from tonight. I'm going to ask for rough sketches. They may say, you've got too much. They may say, sure, we can do this. I don't know what they're going to say, but at this point, I'd like to turn it to them and see what they can do.
Okay. I don't know if that it'll be happening that fast, but we can try.
This is my thought. I don't know what
Okay.
everybody else feels about that.
I think you're headed in the right direction. It's just a matter of.
I think we're ready to ask VHB what they can do for us, and I think that we're giving them a fair amount of information about what we think the town of Southborough would like in this space. And so let's see what happens. One thing I'm not seeing in here is please give us a lot of hardscape. So that's a big change from the original design.
That's it. Here, I have a question. Did that sort of cover our next item, Marguerite, which is the discussion with the landscape architect?
Yes.
Okay. Then if
I'm
we
sorry, I
have
could
just-
not hear what you just said. I'll try to.
Oh, sorry. I just asked if what you guys just covered, sort of covered 5 in our agenda tonight, which is
Yes.
the discussion with the landscape architect.
Yes. Does anybody need that to get said again? Because I know we're having sort of audio weirdness tonight. I can just restate it, or did everybody hear it?
I would like you to restate it, actually. That would be helpful.
All right. This is what I would like to get done tonight. I would like to have Grant's members' key ideas for park layout / function design update. I would like to have that in a format where we could all say, this is pretty finalized, not to say we won't change our ideas later on, but as of tonight, this is what we would like in that space. And when Andrew and I talk by Zoom to Greg Russell and also Michael Klutchman, whose name I'm probably slaughtering, who is the landscape architect for VHP, I would like to say to them, these are the parameters. Can you give us by Thursday a rough sketch or some kind of description or multiple sketches of what you could reasonably put there? So that when we meet a week from tonight, we can hear from them, because they're going to be present at our meeting, what they think they can reasonably do. So far, they've designed blind. They have no idea of what the town wanted. So I'm trying not to judge the original design, because I don't think they had good feedback from us. I think what this prioritization does is it's excellent feedback from us. And I think we would like to know what they can do, and we'd like to see it on paper if possible. So that is item number 5. If people have questions or issues with that, please let me know. But I think it's time to move this into another phase. We've got other things about the park we need to talk about. Obviously, you can see on the agenda. But I would like to, if nobody has any more items to add to the prioritization, to ask Grant to please forward it to me and to Andrew, and then we will take it to VHB and get it to them before we talk to them on Monday afternoon at 3:30.
Marguerite, I've got something, if I may, very quickly, about the landscape architect. One of my points of concern, and it's related to the idea of a heritage tree, which, as I said, I support. is what that land will actually, presumably that we can do something on it, what that land would actually support. And I would contend and hope that the landscape designer would make, as part of their determination, a very serious review of the conditions on site. So for instance, is there something that you could do to mitigate runoff from Marlborough Road, salt runoff that potentially could kill a large transplanted tree? What is the status of the windbreak that was left between the excavated or cleared area and the old burial ground? This has been an ongoing concern of mine, whether that windbreak that's been left is adequate to the task. And again, I'm trying to look at the whole picture here, and that the park would protect the trees that we have in the old burial ground, because the trees are above the stones and the stones are obviously historically fragile.
Now, Kevin, can I interrupt you for 2 seconds and
Yeah.
keep going? I would like everyone in this group to basically ask during this meeting the questions you want VHP, the designer, to hear, because I am going to ask them to listen to this meeting.
Great. Okay, thank you. Well, I just say that I would hope, as part of VHB's review of the site and their review of our list of priorities, that they actually take a very hard look at the conditions extant there right now. Because, for instance, I took a photo the other day of the tree break, and it features one tree that is stone dead, completely denuded. It is as tall as the surviving trees there. I have a photo I can bring up for you. It's got it right here on my computer, but it is enormous, and it's got to go. It's a widowmaker, but that'll be, sort of one less tree again between the proposed park site and the old burial ground. So, yeah, I hope that in reviewing the possibilities, they will perhaps make a site visit and turn their expertise toward an evaluation of the conditions on site, because I'm certainly no expert on it, but I have concerns. Thanks, Marguerite.
Okay, good. And Bill, haven't heard from you for a minute. Do you have questions for the VHP designer?
I'm not sure I have questions. I think one of the things an architect would ask is, what are you going to use this park for? And I'm not sure that we've actually come to grips with that. But in case they do, you may want to be prepared to spin off an answer for them. And then subsequently, I think they're going to ask, who's going to use the park? It's going to be teenagers, children. Is that what we're directing it to? Seniors? And then once you kind of categorize who's going to do it, then you in fact ask yourself, well, what are those individuals going to do in the park? Leading to a discussion which says, what resource do I have to put into this park for these individuals to accomplish this? I mean, I would think that's the way they'd started, but they may not. And if in fact we present them with the resources first, then maybe they can fit those resources in to some degree. Keeping in mind that once we define what those resources are, it will determine who's going to use this park. So.
Good points. Good points.
All right.
Yep, thank you. Freddie, how about it?
So one of my first things was to have a intensive site plan review of all those things and more. The wind, the sun, you need to know the sun at different times of year, existing shade. I'd also say another concern about the trees between near the old cemetery is there are some invasive Norway maple. And having those trees there, not only are they invasive, they also have a tendency to prohibit other plants from growing where they're growing. So actually, you may have an issue with not only a dead tree coming out, but some other trees that should come out. And you need to have that conversation, even though no one, after what's gone on there, wants to talk about taking out more trees. But you can't ignore that topic. No matter, I'm not saying what way you're going to decide to move on it, but it's an important consideration. The other thing I was going to say, if you go back to the priorities to the native plants, that's not quite written the way, I think that could be interpreted badly or not the way intended. It should be native plants, ... which is all of these things afterwards are native. And I think defining what native is per the standard acceptance in permitting in the town, which is straight species native to New England.
Per town parameters or per town definition, right?
Well, it's right now the planning board and the conservation commission require native plants, and what they're using is straight species.
Okay.
By definition, cultivars aren't native, and native to New England. We don't make it native to Southborough. And we don't make it native to anything east of the Rockies. Native to New England seems to cover a wide variety of plants that gives you enough of a plant palette. So the trees are native to New England, straight species, all vegetation except for lawn. We had said that.
So can we say per town
If the
regulation?
regulation doesn't say it quite like that, it's an understanding.
Okay.
Well, but this is just a PowerPoint. I mean,
Yeah.
are we going to get into that level of detail for this? or
Into the
just-
weeds.
Well, if you're going
Larger.
to a landscape architect who's going to design this, I've been working with landscape architects for over a decade, and they will come back with a different understanding of what that line means than what we've discussed. So it's not a level of detail, but they'll come back with, you want trees, you want a lot of vegetation. They're not going to understand that the native plants are all of these things.
Why not say all native plant species, right?
Like that?
Yeah,
Is that better or worse?
I think that's
And then you
fine.
could put a thing, except lawn as needed, because lawn isn't native. But aside from that, the other thing, I had sent to Grant, and I'm sorry, I'm going to have to read it. So go to somebody else.
Okay, James, tell me, what do you think?
Yes, I was just wondering if we could clarify two things on this. The first one is that top point, which is the path. I think we've pretty convincingly heard that ADA is not a sufficient descriptor. I got the feeling we had decided but not said that it would be a pavement sort of path, like it would be accessible for I think someone in a wheelchair. Is that what we were going for? Because I think we should be specific with that.
I don't
Bill,
think
am
we
I correct
actually-
there?
Well,
I don't think we actually agreed on what surface material it would be. I don't think that came up.
I think
I
Bill
don't
can
think
explain.
surface, if we say ADA compliant, then that defines the certain types of surfaces that will be permitted.
Okay, so what if
If
we
we
just
go-
put compliant after ADA and then they can.
All right, now you may want to say, if you choose to, we want the surfaces to be permeable. Because compliant could be concrete, and you don't want to lead them in that direction, I assume. So in fact, you basically want to make it permeable, but ADA compliant, and that can be done.
All right. So what about ADA compliant parentheses and permeable path connecting park to other areas of town?
Do we all agree with that? Since this is what 7 members prioritize.
Yeah,
I would agree with that description.
ADA compliant. Yeah.
And permeable. Sorry.
And then just the other point was I think we should, since 7 of us said some kind of historical marker, I think if we could come together on that, it could simplify it a lot on
Yeah,
what we're
that's
aiming
true.
for.
It takes up 3 lines, doesn't it?
Yeah, that was just the way that I had approached it, just to separate it out. But it does
I'm
kind of
okay
take away
with
from
the
the
middle
point that
one.
all 7 did support it.
The
so.
middle one seems to do historical marker honoring unmarked graves / peoples who have not been recognized prior. I think that sort of covers what 1 and 3 are both saying. Does everyone feel it?
Yeah, I think
Just
if
to
everyone
clarify
agrees,
what-
we could just combine.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because it's sort of
But Grant,
Oh yeah, just sorry, just to clarify, since this was based on people emailing me, unspecified is just that they said that they want a historical marker, but they didn't tell me what. So that's all that means.
Oh, I thought it was
Um,
they wanted one that wasn't specified.
oh, sorry. So
It
yes,
has to be
we
in
should clarify.
general for everything. Okay, so if everybody's okay with just leaving the blue one there and taking the other two out, I think James, that's a really good point. That's much more clear, and make it 7 for the number.
Do we all agree with that?
Let me just point out that we may need to specify what people haven't been recognized.
Yes.
Tough to build a monument to somebody who's, who was here the other day, but not yet recognized.
Yeah.
I think the general understanding, of, at least the way that I wrote that, was something along the lines of what Dan Blanchard, when he was on the committee.
Yes, he said marginalized peoples.
Yeah, historically marginalized.
Yes, good,
If-
good, good.
If we want to
Well,
just add,
Yeah, I think
Sorry.
historically marginalized is good.
I mean, that's fine, but we should, I think, probably make sure, based on the archaeological excavations,
Mhm.
that there are marginalized people in the general area. Now, that pertains to this park. You may basically want to say that there are marginalized people that we know of that are not located in this specific spot, and that's going to be a monument that we will contribute or erect to those individuals. But I think it would be nice to know that there were people who have not been recognized or were buried anonymously through through the process of their cultural or their social standing. We should know that there are some people there who fit that category.
Yes, and my sense of it is even if the archaeological dig turns up no bodies, nothing, I still think there are enough marginalized people in town that deserve a memorial, even if it's not right on this spot, it is right in this town. Does that make sense to people? I just feel like
I
there-
agree.
we had the poorhouse down by the south of town. We had the indentured servants, we had the slaves. We don't know where they are, but they were here. So my sense of it is just,
I think we all agree on this, and I think before finalizing it, there'll be much more detailed talk. I don't think we're going to come to terms until we understand, but I think I've heard everyone's in favor of it, right?
yep,
So I can, just to make sure, I can delete unspecified and honoring and say that all 7 of us support historical marker honoring unmarked graves / historically marginalized peoples who have not been recognized prior.
I'm on that page. That's fine with me. Everybody else?
Yes, for me.
MES,
Andrew? Bill?
Well, I think I've made my point that, in fact, if we know that there are people who are marginalized, we may be more descriptive about who those people are and erect a monument to that.
Yes.
Saying that there must be marginalized people in town, we're not sure who in heck they are, but here's a monument. I don't think it's as effective as being more specific. That's all.
Sally Waters had the list of 103 people who were buried outside the walls of the cemetery that the grave diggers kept. I think that's a start, but I think I agree with
There's a
Frederick.
start.
This is a discussion that is more finely tuned than what we need to give to VHB
Well,
tonight
sorry.
or tomorrow. Andrew,
Yep.
very good.
I don't disagree.
Yeah, so I'm okay with listing me for that item, but
Okay.
just to be clear, I think that this working group, I don't think will be able to like determine the exact contents of what kind of plaques or memorials are. I see the initial point is just kind of getting a sketch of the park, so an idea of where you could put historical markers, and like
Can we
We
meet
don't
I
with
need to
think-
know where it goes yet, Andrew. We just want to,
Ex-
we just want
yeah.
them to know that we want one.
exactly,
I
and
think
this
this
might
is
be
a good description.
a detail, a very important detail
Marguerite,
that
can you
Ben's
please
filled
mute
in like
everybody
later.
that's not talking? I can't hear anyone. I think it's Bill Signs, but there's some sort of crazy static coming off whenever he's not muted.
I
I'm
do
not doing
apologize,
the Zoom.
Freddie.
Andrew's doing the Zoom.
Okay, so I put 6, 7, sounded like 7, but dependent on some other things.
Andrew, are you in this or not? Are you gonna?
He said that I could list him on it.
Okay, so I say keep the one that's blue and lose the 2 that are white,
Great.
and that'll make it simpler. If that's okay with everybody, I think it'll. I'm so impressed that you can do this without tanking the whole entire thing. It's really impressive. Okay. All right. So let's see.
Okay.
Excellent. All right. Now, is there another page we need to look at?
Marguerite,
Yes,
I found the comment I was going to make before.
Oh yeah.
So originally I'd asked for like a blank map of the site,
Mm-hmm.
dimensions, slope, not a big, different than the detail, but like how big an area are we talking about? And this kind of goes to what Bill Signs was saying, how we're going to use the park. I have no idea where any sidewalks are connecting to this. I know from the library, there's a sidewalk going north on 85 on the westbound side that just deads end in the middle of the parking lot.
Yep.
Is that going to be finished? Is there going to be one going all the way up on that side of the Route 85? Is there anything going around next to the sidewalk, next to the park? Now, maybe you all discussed it before I got on the committee, but it would be really beneficial for me to know when you're talking to a VHB, is there going to be a sidewalk on the westbound side of the park coming from St. Mark's Road? Is it going to
Okay,
loop
that's
around?
above my pay grade, but it is definitely a question for VHB, and
And you can
Gregory
just-
Russell is who's
That's
going to
not
be.
that's not VHB. The town knows whether they're putting
Freddie,
sidewalks in.
We've
The
talked
VHB designed the most of the stuff we're dealing with on the main street, correct?
just if I can
Grant,
jump
what are
in.
you trying to?
Freddie, we talked extensively about the exact layout of the paths in previous meetings. We essentially started with the VHB design because that's kind of what the parameters that we were working within at the time. And we're
Can
kind
I
of.
see a copy? Could I see a copy? I'm a member of the committee and I have no idea, and I wasn't provided a plan, and you've talked about it extensively.
Wait a minute, which committee? You're talking about you're a member of the working group and you didn't get the plan? All we had was the one that Karen gave us.
And that should have been
they're-
included in previous meeting minutes.
Yes, they're all included in previous
multiple
meetings.
times. So you've seen exactly what we've seen.
But I just meant to say that, pretty much everything is up in the air right now in terms of the exact design of where the path is going. And I think that's, we had felt pretty constrained previously about the circular path, and there were like 3 or 4 spokes coming off of the circle, and it kind of arbitrarily, at least I felt arbitrarily kind of divided up the space. And
Excuse me, I'm not talking about the path inside the park. I'm just asking for a blank outline of what, not the plan, just a blank, how wide the perimeters are to the north, south, east, west of the parcel. And if there's a slope that could be, the contour lines could be put in. And if we could see, are there going to be sidewalks? There are all these other plans, all these other minutes. I don't have.
No, wait, Freddie, all we had is what Karen Galligan gave to us, which is the original VHB design for the park. That's
I'm
it.
asking for new. A blank, just, when you look at a parcel, a plan with how many feet to the north, how many feet, just that. When you're talking to VHB, can they give it to us? I think that will help us envision much better. When Andrew asked, is there enough space? Well, you can figure out if there's enough space. If you
So in
know,
other words, one of the things you would like VHB to come to us with is an overall plan for the environment of the park. Not the
One-
park
a
itself.
blank outline, kind of, not the,
Yep.
you know, I'm not asking for the whole site plan, which was what we really should have. And
Yep.
also to know if the town is putting in sidewalks on every, you know, surrounding the park. Because if they're not, that totally alleviates where you have trails going through it.
Okay. All right. So in other words, you basically would like
So,
VHB to tell you where the paths in the park will be connecting with sidewalks in the rest of the town.
But we don't know that because we're designing the park.
I'm
Right.
not talking about
Am I
where the,
wrong?
See, you're in other words, you're saying what are the plans currently, which none of us, I don't think, knows, for the rest of that area, independent of that area of the park. In other words, are there
asking
going to
how
be
the
sidewalks up
sidewalks
85? I have no idea. I
so
don't.
the question is, will there be sidewalks
Yeah.
on all sides of the park except for the library and cemetery? You have the library base, I mean, the parcel basically
Right.
surrounded on three sides, say, by streets.
Okay, so
Will there
that's a
be a
good
sidewalk
question.
and all?
Yep, that's
And
a
what
good
is the
question. All right,
dimension?
we can't put it in our park priorities because it's not a park priority, but it is a
You're
question
talking
for
about what
VHB.
we're requesting from VHB when you speak to them and they're going to watch this. I'm
Yep,
just
yep.
looking for like
Well,
hands-on map of the outline of the park.
All right.
Nothing in it, except for maybe some contour lines, which might be helpful.
Okay.
So if I may, just getting back to the PowerPoint, there was one discussion item that I'd like to discuss. The history walk / partial history walk, in which 5 of the 7 had emailed me that they had prioritized that. At the end of our last meeting, Kevin had kind of made a comment about, well, I don't want to really paraphrase him, but just let me say reconsidering the history walk on the parcel. And I don't know, Kevin, if you want to speak more about that, and maybe we can just make sure that this number of 5 is accurate or is still accurate before sending it off.
Sure, Grant. I mean, I think maybe I was inarticulate the last time I spoke on this. That I was simply trying to make the point that a true history walk that involves the downtown of Southborough is really going to start way down at, you know, Deerfoot in Maine, follow the sidewalk to the center, meander around all the historic sites that we have in the center of town, the townhouse, Pilgrim Church, Stonehouse, the old burial ground, the flag school, down Middle Road and back, continuing east down Lattisquama and back, and so on, and ending up in East Main. But that whatever is here, the site has historical value, but it may have quite intense historical value depending on the excavation. But that it was a little silly to think that a history walk would be wholly contained within the parcel that we're discussing, that simply this would be a stop on a much more extensive history walk. And so I was just trying to sort of, again, intellectually sort of clear the air a little bit about what really the role of this triangle has to a history walk. There would be a stop there, but it's not the beginning and the ending of any history walk. And so
Okay,
I just
so
wanted to note
Kevin, could I say instead for where it says history walk, instead of partial history walk / connecting to longer history walk throughout the town center?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
History walk connector or history walk stop.
Mhm.
And again, you know, the challenge in all this stuff is depending on what Greg Walwer finds in the next 6 weeks or so, the best laid plans that we're coming up with may be all moot, but
Right.
that noted, sure, this is a
Right.
stop on a history walk and I support
Okay,
it.
so
Obviously,
yes,
and I thank everybody here for, or 5 of you for supporting the idea. I think it's a great one.
So what about Sorry, my mouth is very parched. I have to think. Grant, I think what you're driving at, is there a way we can describe that better? And maybe one is, ability to connect to larger history walk in this area of town.
Okay, so maybe
Yeah.
just connected to a longer history walk throughout town.
Well, so I was
And-
just wondering, it seems very at least the way I'm looking at it, it seems this point seems very similar to the first point, because presumably the walk itself throughout unless people are envisioning it differently, but wouldn't the ADA compliant path most likely be the place where the whatever historical marker on the history walk would go?
So
if I
what I'm
can-
gonna say with that is ADA compliant walk and history walk will be the same thing, but there's no way for VHB to know that that you can have an ADA compliant walk without it being a history walk, and you can have a history walk without it being ADA compliant, although we really can't. But I think it requires stressing
Okay.
that the
Makes
history
sense.
walk is an important component of it.
So maybe something like, oh, James.
I just,
yeah.
oh, am I cutting out?
No, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. I just think that those first 2 points, which is a path and historical markers, that would pretty much be a connection to a history walk. So I'm wondering if this is redundant on our part, or if we wanted to be explicit with it.
I'm gonna say we may be editing down too far, because you can have a historical marker, but I think that, to Kevin's point, this piece of the history walk should be connected to a much larger history walk throughout town, and that's what we want to be part of a larger history walk.
Okay. So that was just I wasn't sure if we were being redundant. So thanks for that. So we
I
don't
just leave
seem
that the way it is, and they've heard us.
Connection to party.
Yes, connected to, right.
And back to my point I made before, it makes no sense if there's no sidewalks going to those other places. That's
Yep,
why it's important
exactly.
to know.
I agree with Freddie entirely on this, and this is why I'm looking for a kind of holistic view that connects Common Street to access to the old burial ground, that connects to access to the park, if there is one there, and that connects to the library, and that allows a person with a disability connectivity to all of those sites, within reason. I mean, I know there are various obstacles, but right now, for instance, the flag school, which is apparently come into play in the last couple of days, is on an island of parking lot.
Yeah.
We could do better, maybe. Should we? I mean, I would think that Bill would be interested in having that very important building have better connectivity to sidewalks and ADA compliant accessibility. So that would be a priority for me, to have it all sort of knitted together in some elegant and thoughtful manner.
Yeah, and I think that's something Bill mentioned very early on in our meetings, that it should be like a hub, a connecting place for a variety of paths or walks or sidewalks in the town. So yes, I think we're all very much in agreement on that. Are there any other points that you'd like to either mention out loud for VHB, or you would like to change in the prioritization tables here?
I can go to the next slide whenever you guys want me to.
Okay, is that 4 or 3?
I would just add, I think maybe, I don't know if I suggested this already, so I'm the one counted there, but opening in the old burial ground wall to connect. Maybe we should retally that one, just to see how many people are in favor of it.
I
I've
am
had
not, because I think,
conversations, sorry.
Freddie, why don't you speak to that?
I've had conversations with some other people and reconsidered, and I would not be in favor of it. Those, the condition of that old burial ground is very fragile. People walking by, the stones are not in good condition. There are unmarked graves. The trees within there are, you know, many of them have limbs that could seriously harm someone walking under them. It is important to look at it, but inviting the public just to wander through or run through or whatever through all the time, I think needs serious consideration, given the condition of that park. It's not like the burial ground, the rural cemetery, say, with solid stones. It is those historical stones are very frail, and just putting a walkway through there, maybe sometime in the future after it's restored, but it's not in great condition for that.
Yeah, I tend to agree, having watched the Boy Scouts climb over that stone wall to clean it up. I kept thinking, how long is that wall gonna last for those?
This
And
isn't,
that was like for an hour and a half.
this isn't about the stone wall. This is about the gravestones.
Yeah, well, this more of the same. I mean, it was like the stone walls are very fragile. And anyway, there we are. So James,
This is why I would argue, by the way, respectfully, in opposing Freddie on this one, that we should address the conditions in the old burial ground and not restrict access. I want people in the old burial ground, and I want people in the old burial ground that has well-trimmed, robustly cared for trees and well-maintained stones. And if, but you know, so I would like to see increased access and increased thoughtful, contemplative visits to that site. And I don't think the presence of a gate that allows us geezers to get in and out with some ease is really going to make a difference to the kids hopping the wall or not. So
okay, I'm going to say that this may be not in our purview, because the condition and the accessibility of the old burial ground is up to historical, Kevin. You guys are going to have to deal with that.
You're darn right. And we're going to work on it.
Yeah.
But let's leave it at, oh, sorry. I'm just going to, I think I was the one vote for this, and I'm going to leave my vote just as it is. Thanks.
Right.
I agree with Kevin. I just don't think we're ready to open it up yet because it's not in good enough condition.
So I think we should just, I'm not against it or for it, but just take it out because it deals with a piece of property that's not part of the property that we're talking about. And I think I'm concerned we have already kind of like too much. We gotta make this document simpler. And so it's really a point about something that's not part of it's a decision that's for another time by another body. It's a great idea, but what does it really add to the park idea prioritization? It's not actually even part of the park. It's about a different area.
Okay, so
And then for the
take this out or
platform
leave it in?
stage for presentation, since it looks like it didn't get a lot of,
Yeah, I'd get rid of that.
no, just take it out.
I would
Kevin,
just
if
say
it's okay, can we?
if unmarked burials are found in this site, a gate in that stone wall is going to be perhaps the most symbolic gate ever built in this town. So we'll just have to wait and see to what Mr. Walworth finds or does not find.
Okay, so
So
why
is that
don't we
all
leave these two in
another
here?
reason to just take it out?
Right, right. Well, I'm going to say the
Andrew-
following thing. If I can just jump in here. We've been talking about this for an hour, and we've really reached the point where we're going to start going down rabbit holes. So I would just really like to say, let's leave this in here just because it's an important point. It may not be in our bailiwick, literally, but I think it should be there. And then the platform stage, people are going to say they want one. There it is. One person in the group supported that. So I think we should leave those there, just to
I
show
think-
that they had support,
Okay.
but not a lot. I think that if we start taking things out now, we're taking out a lot of what the items in play are, which will need to be addressed, but not by us. And I think that these are options that we've thought of, because the first thing VHB may say is, well, have you thought about a platform or stage for presentations? And we're going to say, yes.
Okay.
I would just leave it alone. I think it's reached a state of it is not perfect, but it is really good at this point. And I think it's indicative of starting a good conversation with them. So I'm going to say, in the interests of, we have 2 more agenda items that are very major tonight.
So
I'm gonna say
this
if-
is, I'll send this to you afterwards. Marguerite, is
Yes,
that-
thank you. Yes, okay.
Someone suggested that moving over the bandstand, did you already discuss that? And could that be part of that one line of a stage?
Yes, yep.
Could you add the bandstand as in that? Would
The
that be
gazebo?
far off it?
Yeah.
Gazebo, bandstand, whatever, in front of the,
Okay, who's voting for
fire
that?
station?
We need a vote. Who is supporting that? Do we have
I
one
just think
person?
it should be a consideration.
I do not support it. So I'm not gonna put it in. Does anybody support it? And they want to
I
put it
do, I
in?
just said so.
Okay, Freddie wants to put that in. All right, so it would
I
be,
support it.
okay, so 2, all right, that's 2. And then I would say at the end of performances, in parentheses, gazebo.
I'm saying it's a consideration. I'm not,
Mhm.
it's not my number 1 priority, but somebody
No, but
mentioned
it's
it.
something that 2 people support, right? So we want to put that in there.
It's a
So I would,
consideration.
after performances, Grant, I would do open parens, gazebo, close parens.
is that different than a platform or a stage?
I think it's similar. That we're quibbling here between those two.
How about gazebo slash stage?
That's fine.
Okay, great.
Okay. So are we good?
Yes, I think we can move on.
Excellent, thank you. All right. So Andrew and I will get this to the VHB people tonight or tomorrow morning. We'll talk to them on Monday, and then they should be at the meeting with us next Thursday, which will be this, what date is that? Right, the 4th of August. All right. And thank you, Grant, and thank you everyone for your input. I'm very interested to hear what they have to say. All right, item number 5, are we ready? This is the no, wait a minute. Wrong agenda, that's the.
Marguerite, I'm so sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
You said our next meeting is August 4th. I have it down as August 11th. I'm just
Yes,
clarifying.
but we could get VHB here on the 4th of August.
Okay, so we're going to do the 4th.
Yes,
In lieu of the 11th or in addition to?
that is a discussion that I haven't even thought to have yet. What do you
Okay,
think?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to.
Didn't hear what he
is this too
said.
many, no, is this too many meetings for everybody?
No,
Way too many meetings for me.
can I say,
Summertime, and this isn't, we don't even know if the dig is going to come up with, I'm confused. Why are we meeting so often if we don't even know that we're going to?
We can get VHB to talk to us on the 4th. That was when they were available to come.
so I think how I envision this is not just one meeting, okay? So that I hope people don't have the impression that like there's just going to be this one meeting and then there's just this one sketch and then that's it. No, I think that the idea is to hear from the group, talk about some graph sketches, and then have it be a little bit of an iterative process while still meeting the timetable that we have.
Actually, can we go on to that, Marguerite? What is our timetable on the report?
The timetable to get the report to the select board was theoretically something around Labor Day. I don't think that's realistic at this point because we're waiting to hear about the dig, and we don't know anything about what that's going to report back. So I
believe
would
it's in
say that
September for that, right?
September, yes, exactly. So they may say nothing there. They may say everything there, in which case a lot of our planning is moot for the time being. And we also have the warrant article suggestion from Debbie Demiri, which I would like to talk about now, which is another piece of moving data in this whole thing. And back to your thing, Freddie, where there are too many meetings. I think it's important to have this meeting on the 4th, and we can take a sense of the group. If they don't want to meet on the 11th, that's fine with me. It's a lot of meetings. I agree with you.
Personally, I think it's more productive when we meet regularly. I feel like as a group, we've had a couple times in which we missed the meeting or got off schedule, and then we didn't meet for a month or 5 weeks or something like
Right,
that, and then it's
right.
kind of hard to get back into it. So I feel like if we think we're making progress, and let's say VHP comes back with some good feedback, then we should try to carry that momentum forward. But that could just be.
Well, I hear what you're saying and I hear what Freddie's saying. So why don't we think about this, but talk about it at the end of the next meeting, which will be the 4th. And
Great.
then we can reasonably see whether it would be a good idea to meet again on the 11th or whether that would be overkill. How's that? Does that work for
So
everybody?
I think it works
So-
if we could have a calendar that had the dates on it, like VHB on the 11th, and then when in the September we're supposed to report to the selectmen, and when do we think the dig's gonna be started? And then what VHB says they can get back to us with another sketch.
Yes, and
And
I
look-
understand,
Look
yeah.
at that way, not
Okay,
just
so,
having meetings to have meetings.
no, but as of right now, Andrew and Marguerite are talking to VHB on the 1st of August. VHB is coming to talk to us on the 4th of August. We had previously a scheduled every other weekly meeting, which was the 11th, but we're going to hold off on that. When the information from the dig comes in, I have no idea. It depends on the state of Massachusetts and the permitting at this point. And when the Board of Selectmen wants our report back, I am going to think, no matter what they thought, that it's contingent on what the dig says before we can give them a final report. So I think we have extenuating circumstances as far as the deadline is concerned.
Is
So
there any way that
say-
could be put in writing so we can, I need to see all the
yes,
flow.
okay, I
It would
will.
be much more helpful to me.
Yes,
you.
yes, basically it's a lot of question marks, but I will put together a timetable as far as we know what's going on. All right, and I will
And
send it
can
to
I-
everybody.
Can I
Sorry?
add that maybe we have a preliminary report before the end of September?
That's a good idea. All right.
To the selectmen, or sorry, select board.
I know, I keep calling them selectmen too. It's not good. It's definitely unevolved of me. All right, so before end of September. All right.
If that's all, do we just want to talk about the last thing, which is
Kathy, I'm sorry, not Marguerite. I think for
Yes.
we can talk to Kathy,
Mhm.
who's the chair of and then because the select board meets on certain assigned days,
Mhm.
right, in September. So we can then, by the next meeting, have the September date by which
Okay.
we are expected to do this.
I think the select board has been very flexible in terms of our deadlines because the whole situation with that piece of land just keeps opening in new and different and interesting ways. And having said that, could we please turn to the agenda item on the letter from Debbie Demiria to the select board concerning the request to acquire parcel B through gift or warrant article. And I'm bringing this up because 4 different people on this working group requested discussing this. And so what is everyone's thoughts, responses?
my first question is how are we responsible for this? Are we should we like make a statement in about it, or
I can't hear.
oh sorry,
He
Let me-
I
said,
said, should we make a statement about this? How are we responsible for this? Should we make a statement about this?
I think he meant a recommendation, but I'm not sure. Is that right?
I think this is something that is not within the charge of the working group. The charge of the working group was to make a report and recommendation to the select board about the planned park, and the planned park is not for a parcel that's 5 times bigger than the space we have right now. And just given the time frame that we have, I don't understand how we could really say to VHP, well, we have had all this intense discussion about this particular space, but what if this other thing happens with this other space? And I mean, that article, the whole, it's 100% contingent on whether St. Mark's would be willing to just give up this land for a base, for almost no consideration. And though, like, there's real concerns about how realistic that is. So I just don't think it's really a productive use of our time to be kind of, what exactly would we do with this? It's also not really, it's a request that's made of the select board, not of the working group.
I would say, one thing I would say about this is that it certainly materially impacts the notion that we're going to get this completed by September. And there are a couple of, I agree that much of the concerns raised in Ms. Demiri's letter of the 24th are none of our business. But some of her concerns, again, do materially impact potential park planning. So for instance, outstanding issues that need to be resolved. Items 4 and 5 is the assertion that the removal of public shade trees along St. Mark's Street, a scenic road, was unlawful under MGL Chapter 40, Section 15C, and they should be replaced in accordance with planning board approval. If that's the case, that materially will impact the planning of the park, because the planning board, at least, Mr. Miri is a member of the planning board, and the Public Works Planning Board is asserting that the planning board has authority with regard to replacement of unlawfully removed trees. The second part of this is that the removal of a historic stone wall along St. Mark's Street, a scenic road, was unlawful under MGL Chapter 40, Section 15C, and it should be replaced in accordance with planning board approval. So again, I'm not being contrary, but if those assertions are correct, and the select board hasn't had the opportunity to take a position on the matter or to adjudicate the matter, but if those assertions are correct, then the result, the remediation of that, these two alleged problems will materially impact the planning of the park. So that's the only reason that I felt it fell within our duty to discuss, or at least to make note of it. If we're sending off marching orders to VHB, we should make note that a member of the planning board is asserting that a stone wall has to be replaced and the public shade trees have to be replaced, having been unlawfully removed. So I'm in no position to judge. I just simply note the assertion, and I take it seriously because I respect the source. So that's all I've got. One small thing I'll note as a correction here. It says, in conclusion and recommendation, as of December 2021, South Rose downtown, including the triangle, is listed on the National Register of Historic Places and considered one of the gems of the town. That is an accurate statement, except insofar as the parenthetical about including the triangle. Alas, right now, that triangle is actually outside the boundary of the newly recognized downtown Southborough Historic District. The boundary is actually the library property and the old burial ground. So that's all I've got.
Okay, thank you.
That's very good.
Other comments? James, Grant, Freddie?
I agree with both Andrew and Kevin in part. I think weighing in on this request to the selectmen, I think it's for a warrant article, and as citizens, we have individual perspective. As a committee, I think it's mostly outside of our charge, which I take seriously with town government. But I think the impact to it, as Kevin talked, we could say we would like that resolved before because it would impact how the planning would go in the future. But I think aside from that, having any opinion on it is not within the jurisdiction of the committee. We all may have, want to weigh in as private citizens, which when you join a committee, you do not give up your right to have opinions and act as a citizen, but you still have to be recognizing what your actual charge of the committee is. And if somebody says it fits in some way, I'd be willing to reconsider, but
Bill, James, Grant?
Let me make the following observation. That if there was an incentive for St. Mark's to cooperate in transferring that property to the town, they might do it in exchange for a park which was designed that would satisfy some of their special purposes, whatever those might be. It implies then that not only are we dealing with park design, but we're dealing with membership of the committee. And therefore, we may be missing an important participant in this committee if, in fact, there is the possibility that St. Mark's would like to participate in the design of a park that would also satisfy their requirements. So.
I hear what you're saying. The charge went out to everybody who lives in town to see if they who is a resident of Southborough, to see if they wanted to participate. Maybe if you know someone who's we do have our James with us, which is one of our most effective St. Mark's people ever. But maybe it'd be worth
maybe James then participates on behalf of St. Mark's specifically, if you see my point.
I'll just say at the moment, I am not a representative of St. Mark's Inc. I think this is getting into a political component that is really more so up to the select board and the voters at town meeting. But I think Kevin made a good point that we should be aware that there's a legal issue here. Should we ask, I don't know if this is worthy of asking town council if, I don't know what the legal implications of this are. So.
Well, I'm not quite sure the legal implications, the specifics of the legal implications are in our domain, that's for sure. But without, and this gets back to who do we believe will use this park, and what will individuals that will use this park use it for? If in fact we had a clear understanding of that, including whatever St. Mark's, since they're citizens, they would certainly may want to participate in this. If we in fact had an understanding of it, and then suddenly somebody came along and said, oh, by the way, we got to enlarge the park by 50% or 100%. If we understood the purpose of the park and who is going to use it, then presto changeo, expanding that concept is not nearly as difficult as if we start from the bottom about what we want to throw into this thing and then try to understand who's going to use it later. It just makes the whole planning process more flexible. Personal opinion, I agree, but there we are.
I think personal opinion works very well for most of us most of the time. So let me see if I understand what you said clearly, Bill. You're thinking that if St. Mark's had more of a share in the park because they would be using it also, then it would be we design a different park.
Well, maybe. It depends on St. Mark's input. I mean, clearly what they think they need, I believe at this stage of the game, is parking area.
Right.
The downtown may need parking also. But at the same time, St. Mark's may want to utilize elements of a park for some other purpose. I don't know what it would be. In which case, that would may incent them to do what Deb has basically talked about. In other words, give the property to the city and then subsequently ask the city to use its money to develop a park which they could participate in the usage of. It's a political gambit, but without it, I'm not quite sure exactly what St. Mark's incentives would be in terms of just giving away the property for any purpose.
Got it. Okay.
I mean, right now,
Marguerite,
as you know, basically what they gave that piece of property, they're talking about not giving it, but they're talking about letting the city utilize it in exchange for what they really want, which is parking.
Marguerite, in your opinion as chair, is there anything actionable we can do on this right now? Or is this
No.
something we should just keep in mind?
No, and I think Andrew is sort of right. It's not our charge, but on the other hand, it is something that's on the horizon concerning the land that we're talking about. So I don't think we should do anything. I think we should simply be aware. And I don't think we can do anything ethically because it's not our call to decide how the ownership comes into play at all.
No, I 100% agree. And you understand that's not what I'm saying, right?
Yes, I do, totally.
Okay. And what I'm suggesting is I think some of the planning that we're talking about doing here is missing an important element, two important elements. Who's going to use the damn thing and for what purposes would they use it? Without that understanding, we put a bunch of benches or whatever our solution happens to be, we put it there and nobody shows up.
So
Why? Okay, Andrew.
Okay, because I know I wrote down in anticipation of what you're saying. I think that we're pretty close to the document that we were just working on. That's in good shape, and I think that will help us get a design that's a good design. But in terms of your say, you should first answer the question: who would go there and what would they use it for? I wrote down library patrons. People are interested in learning about the history of Southborough, and also people who were coming for smaller gatherings of, I know like Kevin has mentioned, like on Veterans Day where there's a gathering. It's at the All Wars Memorial, but you can see, and maybe in Heritage Day or other, you could have little events or talks there. So another point that 2 points that Freddie made that I thought were excellent points. One from an earlier meeting is, you can have a committee that says, we want this park to be used by this way by people in the future, but that's just people come up with their own uses over time, right? You can't exactly predict that. And then the second one is about how even if you just driving by a park has value, even if there really aren't, you don't see people there at that particular time. And I'm thinking of like the park in Corderville with, you're right. One thing we talked about is there's probably the place has become kind of too shady, but I still think that driving by, it contributes to a sense of place and of community to the way the park is designed. It's certainly better off than not having a park there. So I think we have made a lot of progress. I think that we kind of implicitly we have thought about who might use the park and what for purpose, and part of it is thinking about what uses it wouldn't be for. And like it doesn't look like it's a place where it's not a place for active really like sports or concerts or things like that, right? So that's the best response I have for that. But I'm just speaking to this point because I know you've been making it very, very consistently, and we've talked about this, and I agree with you, but I don't think it means the whole process that we've gone through is a bad process or anything like that.
No, I don't, Andrew, I don't believe that's the case either, but it may be between you and Marguerite. One should put together the statement about who do we think in general should be using this park, and in general, what should these individuals be using it for, would be a good preface to the stuff that Grant's put in place.
I'm confident that what
Okay.
Andrew just said would be good for at least talking to the architects this weekend. I think that'd be good.
That's fun. Because I would think that you'd want to start out that discussion that way, and then you would say, oh, by the way, here's the stuff that we think would satisfy the requirements, those top level requirements that I just specified. I think that'd be great.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
And if in fact then something becomes, if things become larger, then you can expand on that top level with additional features that might go in the park that would satisfy the requirements of it. And if St. Mark's wants to participate, same thing. Now what you do is you add another group or another population on the top. They have certain requirements, and those things go into the park also. Ta-da. Simple.
I had mentioned at the first meeting, depending on the sidewalk connectivity, that when many of the seniors walk from the senior center. Now that senior center may not always be there, but currently it is. And they would walk up across the street up there, maybe meet a friend for stop at the bench and then continue on with their walk. There's many people walking around town. And I'll tell you one thing, on Southville Road, when the T came in and they put the sidewalk in, no one was using a sidewalk there. And as soon as it was put in, people are walking. Now, these are people not all going to the T station. People will
Right.
walk to that park. And I'm thinking the senior center, and I could also say, you know, with the native plants there, the Open Space Preservation Commission surely will be having some talk and gatherings to showcase what has been done here, looking at what species of pollinators and other birds and things are there that weren't there prior to putting the park in. The history, that would bring people in. But you can't plan and say we're going to have this because, you know, this event, because somebody has to plan that. And
Well, it's
we're not
kind of a
planning it.
mixed thing, isn't it? If we plan it, we have to do it in such a way that it would have flexibility, and it's sort of build it and they will come, build it wrong and they won't come, right?
Build it, they will come, because if you have sidewalks, they will walk by, and if you have a bench, they will walk in and sit down.
Right.
Beyond that, if you have a little grassy area, both Andrew and I think I showed 2 and Andrew showed 1. You
Yeah.
have a little grassy area. I showed 1 with people sitting on blankets. I mean, if you have something,
Right.
and if you have a space where people can come and somebody holds an event, then that's what happens.
There are a lot of good ways to go with this, and I'd like to ask: is there anyone who is watching the meeting who would like to raise their hand and talk? Andrew, do you see anyone?
No.
All right. Okay. Well,
Marguerite, if
yes.
you don't mind, if nobody else in the audience, I'd like to say something. First, for those who aren't aware, Deputy Buria is my mother. So I just want to put that out there so people know. But I just want to say that I think I could be independent on this matter. I think my thoughts on it, and I don't want to, you know, take us too far into the night here, but I think that it is, at least, you know, I think it's more of a matter for the select board, but I think it does affect the work that the park will be, or that the working group will be doing. Similar to what Kevin said earlier about how different aspects may impact the park design and what we envision the park being. I think that the issue, and I think it is an issue, of the town ownership of the land versus the private ownership of the land is something that has been obviously much talked about previously, and I think that there is, you know, legitimate effort to bring it to a resolution, but I think it is something that could be part of our recommendation, perhaps, that, you know, similar to how, okay, we're going to put forward this design, we want these elements in it, but, you know, predicated on the fact that there's an archaeological dig. I think that, you know, if the working group is so inclined, you could also say something along the lines of, you know, we really feel like this should be public property, you know, if we wanted to. And, you know, I know that the select board had talked about the possibility of a land swap, and I know that, you know, that had been similar to what they had been trying to do at town meeting with the easements, which were rejected. But, you know, I feel like, yeah, I feel like it's at least somewhat relevant to the discussion, although it's more of a matter for the select board. And I think it could be part of our final recommendation. So that's kind of where I stand on the ownership of the land.
All right, good. Any others? No? All right, revisits. It is 8:47. We have our time for our next meeting is set for 7 p.m. on the 4th of August. Any other questions, queries, complaints? No? Do I have a motion to adjourn then?
So moved.
Okay, that
Second.
is James. And do I have?
I'd like to make a
Second.
motion. I would like to make a motion. I think that James and Kevin, compliments on your shirt. I think they're very good shirts.
Thank you,
But,
Andrew.
I'm gonna move to adjourn, or I'll second the motion if it was.
Okay.
I
James
seconded.
moved it. Okay, all right. But then it's been twice moved and twice seconded. All right, so thank you, everyone. I think it was a productive meeting as
Wait, do you take a
usual.
vote? Do you take a
Take a
vote?
We need to
no,
vote.
oh my God, why do I keep forgetting that? All right, sorry. Mr. Dennington.
Yeah, that's a part of democracy, is the voting part.
Oh, I
or-
know.
yeah.
I mean, it seems so silly to vote to adjourn, but there we are. Mr.
know.
Dennington,
Aye.
Mr. Sines,
Aye.
Mr. Farrington,
Aye.
Mr. Nichols Worley,
Aye.
Ms. Gillespie,
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye for me and my shirt.
Now we
Thanks,
get-
everybody.
We
Have
gotta
a
have
good night.
competitive shirt wearing now. Okay, we love that.
night.
All right. Good night,
Thank you,
everybody.
Margaret.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thank you, Bill.